Recently, we've been putting the battlefield classes back together one piece at a time. We went over how Assault creates the openings to get things started, and how Support keeps everyone alive long enough to use it. However, eventually, inevitably, something shows up that neither one of them is really equipped to deal with. A tank rolls into the objective. An attack helicopter starts circling above. Or your own armor is getting the snot kicked out of it and it's a hair's breadth away from becoming a crispy critter. So, who deals with that? This is where Engineer enters the chat. And this class has a much bigger effect on what your squad can actually accomplish than simply being the guy with the rocket launcher. Now, we're going to follow the same premise we've used throughout the series. This isn't a guide. I'm not going to tell you which launcher is the best, give you the greatest engineer setup in all of Battlefield, or spend 20 minutes explaining where to shoot the tank. We're talking about the role, because this entire series started with one basic idea. Every Battlefield class exists because no single soldier can do everything. And so far, we've established two parts of that relationship. Assault creates momentum, and Support preserves it. But eventually, the opposing team puts something in your way that Freedom Seeds and Band-Aids aren't going to solve. And that's where Engineer comes in. Engineers are the deterrent for tanks, helicopters, and jets. Armed with a satchel filled with rockets and mines, this class is all about being a menace to enemy vehicles. They're also the only class capable of repairing friendly vehicles, equipment, and weapon placements. Now, here's what interests me about Engineer. It's really easy to reduce the class to fuck up enemy vehicles, unfuck friendly vehicles. And yes, obviously, that's a pretty big fucking part of the job. But I think that's describing the tools rather than explaining the role. Because Engineer isn't really about rocket launchers, and it isn't really about repair tools either. It's about dealing with mechanical threats that prevent everybody else from doing their jobs. I mean, Assault can't create much momentum when there's a tank sitting in front of him saying, "Nope, you're not advancing towards jack shit today." And Support can't preserve much combat power when a helicopter is turning everything from teammates, vehicles, and buildings into ground beef. Even Recon, which will be coming soon, can identify the bullshit fuckery of the opposing team, but that doesn't accomplish much if nobody does anything about it. They can spot tanks and helicopters all day long from their sniper nests, and all it'll do is annoy the shit out of the Assault and Support players hunkered down behind a wall, and the whole time they're all like, "No shit, Sherlock, we fucking see it." Engineer is the class that does something about that nonsense. So for this episode, that's the premise I'm running with. Play only Engineer, stick with the squad team as much as possible, prioritize vehicles and mechanical threats, repair friendly armor when the opportunity presents itself, use explosives to help open objectives when appropriate, and of course, PTFO first. And just like Assault and Support, we're going to see what happens when I stop looking at Engineer as simply another collection of gadgets, and start treating it like one piece of a four-man band. So let's get something out of the way here. Playing Engineer doesn't mean you spend the entire match staring into the sky with a rocket launcher waiting for something to fly overhead. And the Engineer isn't valuable merely because it possesses anti-vehicle tools. Its value comes from deciding when the squad's mechanical problem becomes more important than whatever the Engineer personally wants to shoot. You're still a soldier, so of course shoot people, take objectives, defend yourself, do all the normal battlefield shit everyone else is doing. But just like we discussed with Support, there are situations when your class gives you an agency nobody else around you is properly equipped to handle. And this is where priorities come back into the conversation. Because imagine this, your squad is pushing an objective. There's clown shoes everywhere trying to fuck up your day. You've got a nice target-rich environment. You're raking in the kills. Everything is going reasonably well, and then a big fucking tank rolls in like a big gutted tattooed biker guy saying, "Yeah, I'm here now." And right there, the math went from 2 plus 2 equals 4 to A plus B equals C.
Need a medic!
The assault player still has clown shoes to deal with. Support still has people to revive and resupply. And Recon can spot the tank, identify where it is, and help everyone keep track of it. But the engineer? Congratulations, motherfuckers. Your team can now identify as the fucking problem. And no, that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to destroy the tank by yourself. That's not the point. The point is that your class
Stay with me!
carrying the tools specifically designed to do something about it, especially if you don't have armor of your own to balance out the math. You can now reasonably force the fat man coming in to retreat. Disable it, distract it, damage it enough that somebody else can finish it. Drop mines somewhere it can't ignore. Or turn the bastard into a smoldering pile of scrap metal so you can toast marshmallows once the objective is cleared. Any one of those things can change what that tank is capable of doing to your squad. And suddenly assault can move again. Support can get people back on their feet, and Recon can continue providing intel. The squad gets their options back, and I think that's the part of Engineer that gets overlooked. Engineer doesn't necessarily create the push. It removes the things preventing the push from continuing, though. And there's another side to this. Because sometimes the mechanical problem isn't the enemy vehicle. Sometimes it's your vehicle. Your team's tank is taking a beating and is getting its teeth kicked in. It's on fire, barely able to keep going. Because it put in the Lord's work. And now, it has to back out of the clusterfuck. The crew is trying to keep it alive. And you're standing 20 feet away holding the one tool specifically designed to help them. So what's more valuable right now? Another random off into the distance kill? Or getting the tank a new paint job? That's the same decision-making conversation we've been having throughout this series. Assault isn't just about kills. Support isn't just about revives. And Engineer isn't just about rockets. It's recognizing which problem your class is uniquely capable of solving. And solving that problem when the team needs you to do so. Now, if you've played Engineer for any reasonable amount of time, you've probably experienced both sides of this. You've been that Engineer. You hear the tank. You see the tank. You know damn well the tank is there. And for whatever reason, you're in the middle of doing something else. Maybe you're fighting somebody. Maybe you're capturing the objective. Maybe you're trying not to get your ass shot off. Or maybe you just fired your last rocket at some random dude because apparently using an anti-tank weapon against one player seems like a financially responsible decision at the time. Whatever. The point is, you have to make a decision. Because Engineer doesn't magically become valuable when a tank appears. No sir, not necessarily. The player still has to make a choice. It still has to decide whether or not that's my problem. And you've probably experienced the opposite side of this too. You're playing Assault, you're playing Support, you're playing Recon. There's enemy armor absolutely fucking up your day. And you see 3 little Engineer icons running around nearby. And you're thinking, guys, the tank is still there. Nobody's shooting rockets at it. Nobody's putting mines down. Meanwhile, you're hiding behind the remains of a building that used to have 4 walls about 5 seconds ago. That's when you realize why Engineer matters. Not because the class exists, because somebody actually chose to perform the role. And the same thing happens with friendly armor. How many times have you watched one of your tanks pull back smoking like a 2-pack-a-day Camel-wide smoker while engineers run right past it? Okay, yeah, that description was a little too specific. Or maybe you've been the engineer who noticed it. You whip out the acetylene torch, or the EOD bot if you're feeling fancy. Run up to the vehicle and start buffing out the dents and scratches. Once you finish giving it a fresh coat of paint and step back, admire your work, and the tank is now back in business to stand on business. And maybe 30 seconds later, that same tank blows apart the armor that was keeping your squad pinned down. Okay, so you didn't get the kill. You might not even get noticed. Nobody is sending you a fucking Christmas card with $20 inside. But you affected what happened next. That's the connection between the player and the role. The gadgets don't make you an engineer. The little wrench icon next to your name doesn't make you an engineer. Shit, choosing the class doesn't even necessarily mean you're playing engineer. Recognizing the problem you're uniquely equipped to solve and deciding to solve it does. Engineer controls the mechanical threats that determine whether the squad can continue operating. Engineer protects momentum. And once you look at the class that way, figuring out when engineer should step forward becomes pretty fucking simple. Tank locking the objective down? Engineer. Helicopter preventing assault from crossing? Engineer. Friendly tank that's about to die and remove your team's armor advantage? Engineer. Enemy armor forcing support and recon out of useful positions? Engineer. Structure needs to disappear? Oh look, engineer. I mean, you don't have to stop at vehicle repairs, my dudes. Gadgets can be repaired. Even support's deployable cover can be repaired by engineer. EA specifically calls out that class-to-class interaction. So now we've got the three pieces of the four-man band. Assault creates momentum, support preserves momentum, and engineer protects the momentum. Because sooner or later, somebody on the opposing team is going to bring something bigger than a rifle to the conversation. That broom is a coming. And when that happens, somebody has to answer it. But here's where I think engineer gets interesting. Because just like assault and support, the game isn't going to force you to perform the role. You could pick engineer and spend the entire match shooting infantry. You could walk past the friendly tank that's smoking like Snoop Dogg's tour bus. You could watch an enemy tank turn the objective into its own personal fucking parking space. You could see the helicopter that's been farming your team for the last 10 minutes and decide somebody else could deal with it. You can do all of that. Nobody's taking your keyboard away. Or your gamepad. But then we're right back to the same question we've been asking throughout this series. Why did you choose engineer? Because here's a situation I think every engineer player has experienced. You're working on an enemy tank. You've already hit it once, maybe twice. It's damaged. It's starting to back off. And then you see an opposing player on foot. Easy target. He's right there. So what do? Do you switch your attention to the easier kill? Or do you stay on the tank before it gets behind cover, repairs itself, and comes back 30 seconds later, thirsty for more? And everybody gets to start this bullshit all over again. And no, neither decision guarantees anything. You could chase the tank and die. You could kill the infantry player and somebody else destroys the tank. Battlefield isn't a spreadsheet, but that's not the point. Decision tells me what you prioritized. An engineer constantly puts you in those situations. Another kill, or the vehicle threatening the objective. Push forward with everybody else, or hang back 5 seconds, repair your team's armor. Use your explosive on a player running, or save it because you know there's armor nearby. Keep doing what you're doing, or recognize that the match has changed and your squad suddenly needs something only you can provide. That's what I think players should be learning from playing these classes this way. The role isn't defined by what you're allowed to do. It's defined by what you're uniquely equipped to do when the shit hits the fan. Assault doesn't have to push. Support doesn't have to revive. Engineer doesn't have to deal with vehicles. You can play every one of these classes however the hell you want. But if everybody chooses their classes based entirely on what they personally want from it, then the team isn't really a four-man band anymore, is it? Nope, just four assholes playing different songs in the same garage. And maybe that's why a good squad feels so fucking different when you finally get one. Nobody has to tell Assault to move. Nobody has to beg support for ammo or a revive. Nobody has to look at the engineer while a tank is beating the shit out of everybody and ask, "You gonna do something about that?" Everybody recognizes their parts and plays it. That's teamwork making the dream work. Not four players standing next to each other. Four players making each other's jobs possible. Remember, Assault creates momentum and says we're going there. Support preserves it by saying I'm keeping us alive while we get there. I brought snacks. Engineer protects it by saying I'm removing the shit that says we can't go there. And next time, we've got one chair left in the band and what he brings to the table. Recon. And that's going to be an interesting one, because if Engineer is responsible for doing something about the problem, Recon has to make sure everybody knows where the fucking problem is in the first place. So, the next time you pick Engineer, I'm not asking whether you got enough kills. I'm not even asking how many vehicles you destroyed. I'm asking something much simpler. When your team needed an Engineer, were you one? And that's a wrap, kiddos. We covered 3 of the 4 classes, and I've already had several people saying they can't wait to see what's in store for Recon. Unless there's any acts of God in my immediate future, Recon is up next. Now, as always, I want your thoughts and comments. I've already gotten some feedback from several of you that you primarily play Engineer and how you roll the class. So I would very much like your thoughts on how I presented it here. And if you aren't doing Engineer and you're not donning the Engineer clothing, does this pique your interest at all in the class? Let me know in the comments section below, folks. Oh, and don't forget to check out the video description for this month's Veteran Spotlight. I would very much appreciate it. Until the next one, out.